Hello, everyone. Welcome to Connected Conversations, Building Context-Aware Customer Experiences. My name is Annette Franz. I am CEO of CX Journey Inc., and I will be your moderator today. I've got a great panelist joining me for this conversation. We've got Gene De Libero, Principal Consultant at Digital Mindshare, Shiv Gupta, Principal at Quantum Sight, and Haley Trost, Director of Product Marketing at Braze. As a reminder, if you have any questions or any comments during the session, please drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to bring them into the conversation. If not, we'll be sure to address them at the Q&A at the end. To kick things off, I'm going to ask each of the panelists a lightning round question. So let's get started. You guys ready?
Ready.
All right, let's go. All right, so we often hear customers say, I already told you this. And so we know that something is actually broken within within our organizations. So what is it? Is it culture's broken, technology, operating model, leadership, accountability, or something else? What's broken that we constantly hear customers say, you know this about me, I already told you this. I'll start with Gene.
All right. Put me on the spot right away, huh?
Right?
I would say, while we would probably want to blame the data and the technology and anything else that we can focus on, I think for me it's the operating model. If the operating model, the way we work, our ways of working, if that's not tightly wrapped, I think there's going to be some problems, and it's one of the things that causes you to misuse your stack. For example, without a good operating model and ways of working, your super sophisticated DXP is just a super expensive CMS. So for me, I'd say operating model.
Absolutely. And operating model and operating system, which is your culture, I think they, even go hand in hand as you define them. All right. Let's go with Haley.
Yeah. I would say if a customer is telling you that they already told you something, that probably means that the data exists. I think we all have a lot of data, but what might be happening here is that it's not being activated in real time by all the teams that need to use it and see it in all of the channels that your customers may be using. So I'm going to concur with Gene here. I think that's going to point to more of an operating model issue, although, of course, all these things are pretty interconnected. That issue is going to be exacerbated or enabled by technology and ultimately owned by leadership. But all in all, if I have to choose one, gun to my head, I'm going operating model.
All right. Sounds good. Shiv, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it always starts with culture, leadership, and accountability, but those are the hardest things to change, right? So I think with the technology available today where we can have AI summarize what's been going on in a ticketing system so you don't have to repeat yourself. With that technology available, it really does come down to what both Haley and Gene were saying. It's the operating system.
Yeah.
I think that's the most practical way to approach it.
Awesome. So now it's time to bring the audience into this because I'm going to ask you guys all the same question. So if you're paying attention, this is your chance to weigh in on this question and let us know what you think. So we're going to launch a poll and ask you the same question. When customers say, I already told you this, what's actually broken inside your organization? So in order to launch the poll, you're going to hit join the audience to participate, right? So once you click on join the audience, just enter your first name and click on join audience. There should be a button there for join audience. And then click on the polls icon in the top right corner of your video window. And you'll see the poll come up right on the right side panel of that video window. And then just select one option, whatever your option may be. Or your response may be. If you have any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat here. But so you're going to be asked to join the audience to participate. You're going to enter your name, click join audience, and then click on polls to answer the question. And we'll give you about 15, 20 seconds, and then we'll bring up the results here shortly. All right, how are we looking on the results? Can we bring up the results on that poll question? All right, looks like Everybody's agreeing with you guys. The operating model is to blame here. Anybody want to add any additional thoughts on that, shall we just go with that and dive right into the bigger questions here?
I'll just
You guys good?
Go ahead, Shiv.
Oh yeah, I'll comment really quickly.
Go
It was
ahead.
interesting to see that most everybody on this panel and then also in the audience did not go to technology, where we all know technology, MarTech
Right.
hasn't been living up to its expectations, but we realize, I think, universally that it has a lot more beyond technology that is a core issue.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah,
deeper than that.
I
You've got to
think
get to the foundation. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Gene.
agreed.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I think Haley made a really good point when she used the word activation. I think that's super important.
Mm,
And part of your operating model has to be that discussion about, well, how you're going to take these great ideas and strategies and actually turn them on and make them work. So there's a big gap in many instances. We see it all the time between great ideas or even purchases of tools and how we're going to use them. So it gets back to ways of working. It's all about operating model. But I thought Haley was spot on when she said the word activation, super important.
yeah, great point. Great point. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the deeper questions and get some thoughts from you guys on these context-aware conversations. So the first question is around really that single source of truth and a reality check on that. We often hear about this 360-degree view of the customer, but in practice, data is often fragmented across legacy systems like you guys have already talked about the data, right? So between CRMs, CDPs, and all of the specialized marketing and martech tools out there, where should the authoritative record of customer intent live, and how do you handle any of those conflicts, any of the data conflicts when the platforms disagree, or when the data differs across platforms? Shiv, I'll start with you.
All right. So when it comes to data and the fragmentation of data, the old adage "garbage in, garbage out" actually does not apply. What I think the new saying should be is chaos in, chaos out. Um,
Mm,
we have the ability to clean data today rapidly, right? And even to match data sets and recognize the larger story that the data is saying. What's really happening oftentimes is that you are merging objectives in your data platforms. One is I want to be able to research. I want a long customer record for the ability to research and even do some modeling and predictive modeling. But then there's also the execution layer. I want to be executing customer experiences effectively and efficiently. And those things are different purposes and require different data sets to think about. So I prefer a CDP or something similar that is centralized, that really focuses on solving 80% of the problems, 80 to 90% of the problems that show up in a customer experience um, journey. And I think that's really where to start. It's to remove the chaos and focus in on a data set that you can actually use to execute good customer experiences.
awesome. Gene, let's jump to you.
Yeah, I'll be the contrarian on this topic because I just, from experience, this 360-degree view of a customer is a myth. I found it to be really elusive. It's super tough to get everything connected so you can really know what's going on across your ecosystem to have that relationship with the customer on a 360-degree view. And I think one of the questions you asked was about, how do you deal with conflict? And I think the idea here is you just need to pick one authority in the system that you're using right now, whatever it is that you depend on for your gold standard of customer information. Pick that system and honor the most recent signal that comes from that system, and you're off to the races, because that's going to help you solve conflicts and solve a lot of problems. And I think one of the things, again, from experience that I've seen is this idea of the perfect customer record. Again, the perfection is the enemy of the good. Get close, do the best you can, but pick a system and try and use that as the system of record, and use that to get the most recent signal from a customer so you can respond to that.
Yeah. And you know what? I love contrarian viewpoints because we really do need to stretch the conversation, get people to think differently. So I love that. Haley, thoughts?
Yeah, I think I guess I'm a mid contrarian because I mostly agree with you here. going back to that idea of activation, I think it's not necessarily about where your data lives, it's how
Yeah.
you use it. The goal shouldn't necessarily be to have this perfect 360-degree profile that I can go open and see everything there is to know about a customer. I think more importantly, does every interaction reflect the most up-to-date understanding of the customer, regardless of where that data lives? And I think there's kind of two things to think about here. The first one is knowing which signals matter to your business, and then kind of figuring out which of your systems is the true authority and owner of that signal, and using that platform then to kind of trigger the actions there. And then again, like, what is the customer trying to do right now?
Yeah.
That idea of real time is so important. You could have an incredibly built out 360-degree profile of something that I did last month that is not relevant at all to what I am doing right now or what I'm going to do tomorrow. So it's really, again, that real time signal and understanding which platforms are the authority for which signals.
Absolutely. I love that. And I find myself using this phrase contextually relevant anytime I'm talking about data, and it seems to it seems to fit right in there too, because that's a great point. What I did a month ago is not necessarily what I'm doing today or what I'll be doing next week. So yeah, absolutely love that. All right, let's move on to the next question. So the most common point of customer frustration is having to repeat their story. Like I said, before, you already know this about me, right? And especially when they've got to repeat it when they're moving from, across the customer journey, right? Going from marketing to sales to a support ticket, and just thinking about the end-to-end experience. So what specific workflow triggers or automated handoffs have you seen successfully bridge the gap between these departments to ensure that context isn't lost? And what signals tell you that the connected experience is actually working for customers, not just internally? Let's see. We'll start with Haley. Sorry.
I think at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'm going to go back to those real time signals. I think when we think about handoffs and automated workflows, it should be less about what our internal processes and stages are than it is about, again, what the customer is doing right now. Like, customers don't care what their lead score is or if they've reached a certain threshold. They want to have those interactions with you right when they need it. And so I think knowing what those important high intent actions are for your brand, and then mapping those back to data points and making those data points accessible and actionable to all of the people within the org that need to use those is going to be the most important part there. And when you think about what does success look like there, it's probably not necessarily like new signals, but maybe the absence of some of those friction signals that you had before. It's maybe fewer support tickets, just better, you might have better NPS score, better feedback. So it's, fewer complaints. I would say it's more that the silence actually speaks loudly in this case.
Yep. Awesome. Gene, your thoughts?
I think the marker of whether or not it's working is when the customer stops having to repeat themselves. I think that's the biggest indication that you're doing something right. If your customer service rep knows what a customer read or clicked or even did, then you know that the handoff's doing its job, and you can respond to the customer appropriately. And I think the absence of friction in the process of that experience is really the ultimate signal that what you're doing is actually producing results. Because I don't know about you guys, but for me, although it has happened on rare occasions where I've had an incredible customer experience, where I've actually said to the rep, listen, if all of my experiences were like the experience I just had with you, it would be beautiful. That would be awesome. So I'm going to call your boss and tell them, how great you did. But it doesn't necessarily happen like that. Customers don't necessarily applaud a seamless experience. They just don't complain.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Shiv, you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I'd say it's important that we have seamless handoffs, but that really should be thought of as part of a larger design of that customer experience, right? And I'll give you a quick example of what that looks like when it fails. I have a cell phone carrier, and you often mail in your old cell phones and you get credit for that cell phone. And that shows up as a monthly credit. Well, I hadn't been receiving monthly credits for several months, and I recognized that, and I called them. They handed me off to multiple people, and every one of them actually fully understood the context of why I was calling. It was actually kind of refreshing. I didn't have to repeat myself. But at the end of the day, their policy was, well, we don't give you refunds on backdated credits. We'll have to roll those forward into future months, i.e., you'll have to stay with us longer if you want to recruit
Right.
them. So at the end of the day, you look at that and say, well, okay, you got the handoff right, but you got the customer experience wrong. And I think, and oftentimes you even get, update call from them saying, we're still working on this, we're still working on this. And so the frustration didn't go away, even though I didn't have to repeat myself. And I think that's
Right.
the other thing to think about is how does that handoff or any of that experience point actually play out in that full spectrum of the experience? And what are you actually designing for? What is the objective? What are you trying to hit in terms of the outcomes? And have you thought through that and planned that accordingly?
Yeah, I love that. Your example is a great example of, being people centric and putting the people first and putting you first rather than putting like, hey, we're going to hit our revenue numbers for the next year because we're going to continue to hang on to this customer for another year because of the credits. So absolutely. Yeah, great point. I'm going to take a quick pause here and take an audience question because this one came in and I didn't catch it on time, but it came in on the previous conversation we had. And this one is directed at you, Gene. You said that a 360 view is a myth. And the audience member wants to know, do you think it will never be achievable? Is 360 view just going to remain a myth for all time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think also a really good poll would be to find out how many people here today are actually using a 360
Yeah.
degree view of their customer. But to answer the question, I think, yeah, at some point we're going to get to it. We have to, right? Look where we are today with AI and how it's being integrated in every part of our life. But I think one of the things we have to understand is that we're consumers, right? So we can use ourselves as examples. I'm constantly changing. I have no loyalty to any brand at this point. I am doing business with brands that make me happy and solve my problems. And, back to what Shiv was talking about earlier, this operating model is rooted in people. And two companies that are, really on the ball, one is American Express and the other is Amazon, for me. It doesn't matter what I call them about.
Yeah.
They always want to solve my problem because they know me and they know I've been a customer since how many years, etc. But the idea that, they have a 360 degree customer record and they know everything about me, there's no possible way they can know that because my preferences, my needs, my wants, they change on a regular basis, on a daily basis. It's virtually impossible to keep up. And that's why I said earlier, you really need to find some system that you can depend on that holds good information. Back to Shiv's point about chaos if it's not clean, if it's not clear, then you're not going to be able to take action. So find that system and you can use that to take action right away. Use the most relevant signal and you'll get close to having a relationship with the customer. It may not be 360, but you'll be close enough for them to say, hey, they know me. So it's coming, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah, I love that. We're trying to launch a poll here just because you had such a great idea. Hey, we're doing this stuff on the fly.
Great.
So just a second, we are going to try to launch a poll here. So Sarah is going to let us know when that is ready.
Can I jump into
I
that?
just want to say, okay. Oh, sure. Yeah, and by the way, the poll is ready. So for the audience, you should see that poll pop up and go ahead and click the poll button and answer that question while Shiv weighs in here. Go ahead, Shiv. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I'd say, and I like where Gene went with this, the 360 view I don't think it's a myth. It depends on how robust you want that 360 degree view, right? If you really focus in again on 80% of the problems that show up, you may be able to manage that and create a 360 degree view. Do you need to know that your customer missed a payment 7 months ago or even 2 years ago? Is that relevant information? It is a 360 degree view, but it's not relevant. Do you need to know whether they returned something 6 months ago or a year ago? Is it relevant? So part of this 360 degree view is actually designing your experience and understanding what is it inside that this 360-degree view that really matters to you, that matters in terms of being able to execute on the vision you have, in terms of the value exchange that you want to have with your customers. In that, if you focus on that, then I think it's achievable. It's not a complete 360-degree view, but that's the myth. But a manageable 360-degree view that really hits to the pain points you're trying to address, I think that's possible and actually doable.
Yeah. Okay. And apologies to the audience, we can't launch that poll right now, apparently. So we would love to hear your thoughts. If you want to put it in the chat and give us your thoughts, if you are, have implemented a 360 view of customers, we'd certainly love to hear from you on that. 360-degree view of customers and omni-channel are some of those terms and phrases that I've heard for years and years and years, and very few brands have done it or perfected it or any of that, right? So it'll be interesting to see, where we go with that going forward, especially now with AI, and the technology is very different from 10 years ago when we were, heavily talking about this. Okay, we've got one comment, working on it, but not yet, and should be an option. So we are getting some feedback from the audience. So thank you for that. Far away from 360, but we want to reach it. So that's we love that. It's definitely on the radar for brands. So thank you for weighing in, and feel free, keep adding your comments here. We'd love to hear from you. All right. While you're doing that, we shall move on to the next question, which is around incentivizing cross-functional collaboration. So silos are often a cultural thing, and I always say silos. There's no walls. It's not a physical thing. It's really just the lack of sharing information and passing around data and communicating with your neighbors. Those kinds of things, and that's really more of a mindset. It's not technical. It's not physical, right? So if marketing is measured on lead volume, sales is measured on revenue, service is measured on resolution time, goals are at odds, right? Because everybody's measured on something differently. And ultimately, I think if we have a customer-centric organization, we're going to put the customer first on this, and that's truly what's going to matter when it comes to what's being measured. But in the meantime, how do we align sales, service, and marketing around shared, customer context when goals, metrics, and timelines are fundamentally different? And then how should they realign KPIs to incentivize teams to prioritize that seamless customer journey, that seamless customer experience, over their own departmental metrics? And I may have answered the question there with that customer-centric culture, which is by definition a collaborative one and puts the customer first in all things. But let's start with you, Haley. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think if every org has their own goals and metrics that they're working toward, and they're all different, that is a great opportunity to start introducing some of those shared customer journey level outcomes alongside those more functional metrics. All teams should be jointly accountable for some things like customer retention, expansion, maybe time to value. What are some goals that the entire organization can rally around?
Yeah.
I think also then it's important to align those teams around what those customer signals are that we're all reacting to around these same life cycle events, so that we're all kind of taking action in sync as well. And overall, I think your company leadership is going to be really important here, because someone has to own that end-to-end experience and make it clear to all these teams that optimizing just one stage of the funnel at the expense of another is not what success looks like.
Yeah, agreed. Gene, thoughts?
Yeah, Haley again with some solid gold. The big question for me before I get to the answer to this is, for all the people that are participating today, can you tell me who owns the customer in your organization? I bet you can't.
Great question.
And it's not a reflection on you. It's just a reflection on how we operate, right? So let's think about the question that was just posed. If you have multiple departments, multiple groups inside the business, and they all own something different, well, the first thing is the question for them is like, are you looking at everything that you do through the lens of the customer? That's actually the top question for your business. Is everything you do wrapped around, right? Is that customer lens wrapped around everything you do? And then I guess the idea here is, if those marketing and sales and support, if they're all looking at completely different measures or outcomes, Well, first of all, none of that requires any of those teams to work together, number one.
Right.
And number two, um, they're comped on different success measures. So you have two problems there, right? One is they don't have to work together. And two, they're comped completely differently because my success and your success, they're measured on completely different things. So here's an idea that I think works really well. Why don't you just give them a number, give them a KPI that they can't hit alone? They all have to hit it together. And
Love that.
maybe it's like, did the customer come back? Um, and there you go. The conversation changes completely at that point.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a great way to look at that, and a great, do you have any idea what that KPI might be?
Well, like the example I just gave was, did the customer come back? Did we have a customer that came back because we didn't solve their problem, right? And there could be others too. I'd be curious to see what Shiv thinks and what Haley thinks as far as, what could we measure on? Because I think that's a good one. That gets everybody working together.
Yeah.
If the customer came back and bought again or complained again or right, whatever it might be.
Yeah. All right, Shiv, I'll let you answer that and answer the question itself, and then we'll come back to Haley and get your thoughts on that metric, on that KPI.
Since my memory is getting weaker every day, I'll answer the first question, the immediate question. I like LTV as one of the core metrics. Lifetime value does reflect that full chain, and it requires a little bit of sophistication to really become a good KPI, but I think that is good, along with NPS and a few of the others. But I think Gene and Haley hit it exactly right in terms of what's required and the thinking that's needed, and even your point in that around a customer focused organization. If I'm just going to be additive to that, what I think is there are opportunities for interdependency among these groups. So, for example, marketing sends out a lead, but sales says, hey, these leads are marketing qualified, but they're not sales qualified. They don't work for me. They don't have whether the right income group or the right need, whatever that may be, right? I need you to improve the conversion rates, not just the lead rates that I'm seeing. You may see from marketing a requirement that says, hey, I'm going to do a lot of remarketing to some of these folks that we haven't quite sold. I need you to be up to date and let me know what the sales disposition status is so I don't put them into the remarketing campaign needlessly, right? So there's a lot of interdependency in a well-functioning organization, and that interdependency can be one of those ways in which you create that the continuity.
I love it. Haley, coming back to you real quick. Thoughts on that sort of global KPI to get everybody working together end to end?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Shiv on this one. I think lifetime value is a great global KPI and still gives each of the teams a lot of flexibility within that to set their own metrics that will ladder up into that lifetime value. But that's just a great overarching one to work toward.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. We have about 2 minutes before we jump over to Q&A. And I wanted to just reach out to the audience and say, hey, just, if you've got any questions, pop them into the chat and we will absolutely address those here in just a couple minutes. I wanted to because we can't get away from this conversation without talking about AI. And this will be like a speed round because we've got just a couple minutes until we need to jump on a Q&A. As we move deeper into AI driven personalization, that whole black box becomes a real risk, right? How can teams ensure that AI generated interactions remain consistent with the brand voice and really grounded in real time customer behavior rather than relying on outdated and or misinterpreted data, right? How do we prevent AI driven personalization from really just amplifying bad data? Because we know that that's what happens a lot of times is AI just amplifies the issues rather than necessarily helping us, right? So how do we keep it from amplifying that bad data, the outdated assumptions, and biased decisions? So Shiv, I'll start with you. And again, we've got about 2 minutes until we start.
I'll try and be quick with this because the answer is actually pretty obvious.
Okay.
Same way you'd prevent a new CSR from making those mistakes. And that means understanding that AI is improving the mechanics, the speed, some predictive accuracy and personal depth of the engagement. What it doesn't change is alignment, policy, clarity on the customer value definition, a purposefully designed experience, trust building, all those things that you think are important, those are not going to sit with AI. Those have to sit with the organization, excuse me, and actually define how you want to set up the data infrastructure underneath. How do you manage governance? And how do you execute what you think is a good CX strategy that's AI driven?
Awesome. Haley?
Yeah, two things here. I think the first one is deciding which signals are trustworthy and which aren't. When you're thinking about how you're training your AI and using AI, making sure that it's using those high quality behavioral real time customer signals. Like, what are they doing in your product right now? What life cycle events are they doing? What are the recent interactions? Did they just make a purchase instead of relying on some of that more historical data or inferred attributes as well? I think the second piece is just ensuring that you have a human in the loop while you are using AI. You need guardrails for brand voice consistency and even making some of those decisions about what AI can and cannot do. I think we're seeing some really interesting use cases with AI agents right now, where brands are using maybe service agents to do things like interpreting customer sentiment. And then when they're responding, they're actually choosing from a catalog of human approved offers or messages that they can respond with. And then it's all set within the human created brand tone. So it's an AI optimization. AI is helping to deliver this message and understand what's going on, but it's all within this human approved framework with guardrails to keep everything on track and on brand.
Excellent. And Gene, I'll let you wrap up this question.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what Shiv and Haley said, except to agree that, bad data in means bad personalization out, and that human touch is super, super important. AI is not going to solve all your problems. You still need to be involved.
Great. Awesome. All right, let's jump over to the Q&A. This has been a great discussion. Let me just reach out to the audience again and just say, if you have any questions for these amazing panelists, please pop them in the chat now, and we will address them. We have a couple of questions have come in already, so we'll start there, and we'll see where we go and how much time we have once we address those. So the first question is, most companies say that they want a single view of the customer. What's the first thing they get wrong when they try to build it?
I'll go first.
Please.
Haley, you want to take this one? And whoever wants to answer it, feel free to.
Go ahead,
Go
Haley.
ahead.
Yeah, I can kick off, and then I'll pass to Gene. I know you've got some thoughts on this. I would say the first thing is that brands treat this as a static storage problem rather than dynamically acting on signals. You're just trying to gather all of the various pieces of data you've collected over the years on a customer and put it in one place. But is that really going to be useful to you moving forward with this customer? I don't think so. So I think that's the biggest thing. We need to be thinking about this as like an always on dynamic meeting source of information rather than just one time look at what a customer has done at some point in their time working with your brand.
Gene, go ahead and
I will respectfully pass to Shiv and follow up the rear.
Okay.
I'd say it's purpose, right? Do you have a clearly defined purpose of why you want that 360-degree view? What that 360-degree view is set to accomplish? What ends up happening oftentimes, I'll just give you a silly example, is they'll say, hey, let's throw all the clickstream data into this 360-degree view. Why? Why do you need all that extra data from the clickstream? Like Haley pointed to, go to the signals, go to what's important. But that also requires some discipline and thinking. And really the word I'm looking for here is craft. Get back to the craft of marketing, craft of business. If you get back to that craft, the 360-degree view takes care of itself in that it gets defined in a manageable way.
Okay. All right, Gene.
My turn?
It's you now. It's all you.
All right, so back to my new friend Haley's activation word. It's super important because you've probably already have a lot of data inside your organization, right? You probably are close to getting that 360-degree view. The question is, how do you surface that data? How do you wrap governance around it so you can use it? And I think most important when we talk about that question that came in earlier about are we ever going to get there? Well, we can get there. We have to stop thinking about integration where we're just connecting the pipes, right? And we have to start thinking about orchestration where we talk about how things move through the pipes. So
Yes.
once you understand what you need to connect, then the really big enabler for you is going to be orchestrating all that data so you know what to do with it. You have to activate it. And then once you do that, you'll be closer to that 360-degree view. It's never going to be perfect. I think Shiv said that too. It's never going to be perfect, but you can get close. 80% is good enough. Listen, you'll be way ahead of everybody else.
True. This is true. Absolutely. All right. Here's another question for you. Is a CDP a prerequisite to connected experiences, or can companies achieve meaningful progress without a CDP? Just go ahead and dive in if you feel like answering that one.
I would say no, but the CDP industry has done a great job in making you believe that it is necessary. It's not. Um, we talked about it earlier. Pick and I'm not a CDP hater, but pick a platform that's in your ecosystem that you can point to as some sort of system of record. And you probably have that already. Whether it's perfect or not, again, it's not important. But I wouldn't be looking at a CDP until I've outgrown everything I already paid for. I need to maximize my existing investments, and I want to make sure before I buy something else, I'm not making a mistake. And a CDP is not going to solve your problems because you probably have other problems that are underlying. Bringing in a piece of technology doesn't fix that.
Yes. Shiv or Haley, you guys want to weigh in on that, or?
Well, sitting in the pews
All
at the
right.
Church of Gene, it is he's right. What he said is absolutely right. CDP is not going to solve all your problems, but I would just add one thing. Sometimes CDP isn't about the technology, it's about the discipline. When you sit down, you say, I have a data set that is different from my marketing database. It is different from my clickstream data. It's different from my CRM system. This one is designed to execute something different. And I want the clarity. It does become a way to achieve some operational clarity because you are now sifting and saying, it's not all the data that sits in my marketing database. This is all I really need. And this goes back to where Haley was. Like, what are the important signals? What are the ways in which we think about activation? So I think that CDP can help you isolate the noise and the chaos so that you have a more focused data approach towards execution.
Okay. Awesome. Haley, anything you want to add to that, or are you also in the front pew of the Church of Gene?
Gene. No, I all agree. I don't know that a CDP is necessarily a prerequisite to any sort of context-aware experiences. I think at a minimum you need a place to send messages, a place to understand what your customers are doing right now, and a place to understand if they're having an issue right now or a support request. So you can sort of start to orchestrate those customer experiences and customer journeys. But is the CDP the silver bullet to that? I don't know that I would say that.
Well, here's one more question that can help you guys answer the question, right? That's been posed. Earlier, we asked, who is it in your organization that owns the customer? Well, here's the next question you can ask. Who in your organization owns data quality? So before you purchase a CDP, you better get an answer to that question.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think those are a couple of big questions there that people need to ask and address before they do a lot of things and get a lot of different types of technology and proceed with this. So thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the audience for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your input. Thank you, Gene, Shiv, and Haley, for your great insights. And to the audience, please take a second to just rate this session and click on the red button in the Dig Deeper tab to get to the next session after this one. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you again real soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.